Okay, it has taken me a while to find a really good example to explain some of the statistics involved in risk and return. I think I have. We're going to look at selected realized returns from 1926 to 2014. This is from before the Great Depression until just a few years ago. And we see the average return for small cap stocks is 16.7%. So that return is nice. Remember, right now savings accounts are only going to give you about 0.25% of a return. Small cap stocks, 16%. Really high. Standard deviation, however, is ridiculously high, 32.1%. That means that there's a chance you'll get 16.7%, but you may get considerably less or anything back at all. Small cap stocks are great for making money if they're successful. Large cap stocks, average return 12.1%, standard deduction a little bit better at 20%. Large cap are, we're getting into like your blue chips, IBM, AT&T, right now Microsoft, Amazon, Berkshire is in there. So decent return, still a high standard deviation. We talk about long-term corporate bonds, 6.4%. Now, bonds, again, you know at this point that bonds are debt, so they work kind of similarly to a loan. And standard deviation, 8.4%. You are not without risk. It's not as risky, but it's still there. Long-term government bonds, 6.1% average return, 10% standard deviation. US T-bills, which are all but guaranteed to be paid back, very little return, but you're not going to lose anything through inflation. That has an average return of 3.1 and a standard deduction of average return of 3.5, which is mostly inflation, and then a standard deviation of 3.1. Now, once we get to portfolios, we're going to start, the average return rate is still decent, still reasonable with a lower standard deviation, depending on how we mix those up. So eventually we're going to get to portfolios, but we're going to talk about single assets for a bit first. We are going to compare T-bills, which are always 3%, to high-tech or HT, high-tech stock, versus collections. COLL is short for collections in this instance. And rather than just use 3 different possibilities, we're going to use 5. We're going to ramp it up a little bit, make it a little bit more precise, a little bit more likely. So you'll see in the first column, the economy, we've got recession, below average, average or most likely outcome, above average, and then a booming economy. It will depend on projections, but sometimes you don't always see what's going to happen, and it will surprise you. But the likelihood of that surprise is fairly low. We've got our probabilities listed. We have a 10% chance of a recession, 20% chance of below average growth, 40% average growth, 20% above average growth, and 10% boom. We need to figure those in, and we have. A T-bill is guaranteed. It doesn't matter what happens to the economy, the government is still going to pay out the same amount. Now, high-tech and collections act a little bit differently. If there is a recession, it's assumed that high-tech's return is a negative 29.5%. Not good, but not as likely. 10% chance might be worth it. If there is a below average growth, high-tech is a negative 9.5%. Still, you're going to lose some money, but not everything. If the economy is average, meaning it just keeps chugging along as it has, we have a 40% chance of a 12.5% return. If there's above average growth, 27.5%. And if it's a booming economy, we might get a 42.5% return on this investment. So high tech, if there's a recession, it's not going to go well. If there's a boom, it's going to be wonderful. Collections is an entirely different animal. Collection, if there's a recession, we have the opportunity to get a 24.5% return. Pretty good. Below average growth, 10.5% return, still good. Average growth, if the economy just keeps going as it has, negative 1%. It's taking a turn here. If the economy has above average growth, a negative 5% return. And if there is a booming economy, a negative 20% return on collections. So it is the opposite of high tech. So T-bills will return the promised 3% regardless of the economy. T-bills do not provide a completely risk-free return because there's an inflation risk. We still have to worry about that. But the government does try very hard to minimize that. T-bills are also risky in terms of reinvestment risk. We might not be able to get the same return on a T-bill. And T-bills are risk-free in the default sense of the word because the federal government is going to pay them back. So we have, we're going to look at high tech. High tech moves with the economy. It has what's called a positive correlation. The economy goes up, high tech goes up. The economy goes down, high tech goes down. This is standard with most shares, most corporations. They track along with the economy to some degree, and we'll talk about that. Now, collections is counter-cyclical, meaning it has a negative correlation. It reacts the exact opposite of the stock market, and that makes sense. The collections is, you know what that is. It's when somebody doesn't make their payments, they default on their car loan. Collections will go retrieve the car. So they make money when the economy is not doing so well, or people are irresponsible with their money. So the best thing that can happen for someone with shares and collections would be the economy tanks. The economy tanks, they go and repossess cars, repossess homes, whatever. They're busy when the economy goes down. Negative correlation with the economy. Those correlations are important. All right, calculating the expected return. Here we have the expected return for high tech. We take that 10%, multiply that by the negative 29.5%, and then we add the 20% chance of the negative 9.5, 40% at 12.5, 20%, 27.5, and a 10% chance of 42.5. We take all the outcomes of those products, or the result of the multiplication, add them together, and that gives us a 9.9% expected rate of return. Expected rate of return in this case, or in this particular book, is what's called R hat. It has an R with that little caret above it. It's R hat. So if I refer to it as that, I'm not trying to be funny, it's just what it's called. Now, to figure out the collections expected return, we're going to do that on the board. So we are going to take, this is for collections, 0.1 times 24.5 equals 2.45, 0.2 times 10.5 equals 2.10, 0.4 times negative 1.0 equals negative 0.4. So here we're in the negatives. 0.2 times negative 5.0 equals negative 1.0, and then we have 0.1 times negative 20 is negative 2.0. So we have 2.45 plus 2.10. That gives us 4.55. Then we have to add these together. So we have 0.4, 1.0, 2.0 equals 3.4, but that is negative. So we say 4.55 minus 3.4 equals 1.15 or 1.20. That is our expected return. So now we have our expected return for collections as well as high tech. There we go. Expected return of high tech is 9.9%, T-bill of course 3.0, and collections is our 1.2%. So high tech has the highest expected return and appears to be the best investment alternative, but is it really? At this point, we have not accounted for risk. So we're going to look at that in the next video. We're going to look at the standard deviation and start to account for risk. If you have any questions, you know how to find me, jfrazer@fairmontstate.edu, or on Twitter, FSU, FRAZER, or any number of other social medias. I'm pretty much on everything. So I hope you're well, and you will be hearing from me soon. Thank you so much.